Okay. I want you to take out a little scratch piece of paper. I'm going to close the screen because I'm going to let you listen to some sound clips. And I don't want you to see the people. These are some video clips from YouTube. I want you just to listen to them. And I want you to think about how you think the person in this sound clip would be perceived based on their language, their speech. They're all speaking English, so their speech. Think in terms of socioeconomic status, maybe educational level, profession. Where do you think this person, how they might be perceived? Now, this isn't necessarily your personal perception of them, but just in general, how you think they might be perceived by society, just based on their speech. I'm not going to tell you anything else about them right now. I'm just going to let you listen to them talk. Okay, so we're going to do 3. I have several examples, but we'll just do 3 of them. Ready for the first one? Okay. Here he is.
The common man's look at the myths supporting the federal takeover of healthcare. The impact of the federal government taking over healthcare will be significant. Whether you are for it or against it, you need to voice your opinion to your government representatives. Being silent harms them by their having to make important decisions blindly. They can only guess what you want, and guessing is no way to make major decisions that affect us all.
Okay, that was our speaker number 1. So you're just kind of reflecting on what you think socioeconomic status might be, academics, profession, just based solely on that conversation he was having. We're going to move to clip 2.
Well, it's kind of like it is now. I was kind of laughing. I said, "You serious?" You know, and I'm thinking, you know, maybe it's just fell out of a trailer somewhere or something, you know, and obviously it probably had a home close by here somewhere, and then maybe somebody just not knowing it's gone, you know, I don't know. So yeah, it was kind of funny, but it is on a serious note, you know, it could cause some problems for traffic, you know. We wouldn't want for anybody to be hurt, you know, seeing it out here in the middle of the road.
I'll tell you what it's about at the end.
You know, obviously, if anybody does.
But right now, you're just
sure
listening to
his
speech.
We'll see if we can't
and then we'll do one more. This one might actually be familiar. It's a few years old, but you might recognize it if you happen to follow this. Last one: socioeconomic status, reflecting on what their academic or educational level and maybe profession.
Anybody tell you that I miss practice, if a coach say I miss practice and y'all hear it, then that's that. I mean, I might have missed 1 practice this year, but if somebody say he doesn't come to practice, it can be 1 practice out of all the practices this year. That's enough. If I can't practice, I can't practice, man. If I'm hurt, I'm hurt. I mean, simple as that. It ain't about that. I mean, it's not about that.
All right, so what do you think? Let's go back to speaker number 1. How is speaker number 1 going to be perceived in society based on those characteristics I gave you? Educator, in government, maybe he works in government. A think tank, huh? Okay. Socioeconomic status then, where do you think? High. Mm-hmm. So we're agreeing that overall intelligent. All right, what about speaker 2? He's from the South. Maybe a farmer, a journalist. Mm-hmm. Did you think he was as intelligent as the first guy? It does. And I love how perceptive you are. And again, you're my high flyer. You're the great, wonderful teachers, high-performing teachers. Think about society, though. Is society going to stop and maybe consider what he said, the subject, and you know, how casual or non-casual the conversation may be? What automatic judgment are they going to make in relation to the first guy? And, yeah. So he's not going to be seen as and for all we know, he might be brilliant. I know people that speak worse than him and are brilliant. I have an uncle, Uncle Buddy, and Uncle Buddy could tell you when it's going to rain. He could tell you why the birds are doing, and Uncle Buddy didn't finish 8th grade. And so his speech is not, you know, is fluent as others, but it doesn't speak necessarily to his overall intelligence level. But unfortunately, society doesn't look at that. You know, you hear that speech and that language, and we make judgments based on that. All right, let's look at the last one. Anybody? I know Tanya said, who was he? That was Allen Iverson a couple years ago. Yes. So, but without knowing that, what did you think about his speech? You felt he was black, young, as smart as the other two, maybe? Probably. You think? That he had some college. Good. Yeah. 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 Great. So what happens if Speaker 1, Speaker 2, and Speaker 3 come for a parent-teacher conference? And they speak to you in the way that they spoke, you know, all relevant, of course, to their child. Does that change in any way? Does your communication change based on the way they speak? It shouldn't. Do you think it does? Yeah. If we're being honest, you know, and sometimes you do it with good intentions because you want to make them feel more comfortable. You don't want to be this, you know, smart academic, and so we think, okay, I'll get a little bit more lax, or I'll say things that may. Yeah. So what we don't want to do, though, is to in any way demean or make assumptions about someone's overall intelligence just based on that. And we all do it. It's so easy to do. You know, you make those, you hear someone and you think automatically, you know, you begin to make those judgments. What we're going to do, when's our break, Barbara? Is it? Oh, 11:12. Okay, good. So you have time for your pretest. We're going to have a pretest and a post-test related to language. So today, I would like for you to read these 8 sentences that I have written on this, or typed on this form. The sentences on the top, I didn't really count that well, so I'm sure that's not going to be right. The sentences on the top are, they're all, in fact, all 8 sentences are written in standard American English. What we're familiar with, what we know to be correct and accurate English. And so what I want you to do today is to translate those sentences. The first sentences at the top, the 4, I want you to translate those into Southern Appalachian dialect. The ones at the bottom, I want you to translate into African American English. And then I'm going to grade them. Not really, but I just want you to, I want you to translate them. No, we don't have time for that. No time. We've got to go to break at 5 minutes. So just, you know, I'm not going to model for you at all. Thank you. So before the break, you took your pretest on the 2 dialects. And by the way, I didn't mention this, but the 2 dialects that I chose to highlight today are not inclusive of all people from the South or all African American people. And I know that goes without saying, but I want to make sure I reiterate that. Obviously not everybody in the South speaks Southern Appalachian dialect, and not all African Americans speak what we call African American English. And there are several different word names: African American English, African American language. Same for Southern dialect, Appalachian dialect. Several different words that are names for each. And then you have some people who are fluent in both. So you may have some African Americans who speak African American English, and I saw some of you saying that you could relate to that, but know how to code switch back and forth. And again, these are just 2 dialects that I picked. If you Google dialects in our country, America, the word's leaving me, there are tons and tons of them based on different areas of the country. So these are 2 that I chose to highlight a specific point that I want to make. But before we go into our instruction about this, someone just real quickly tell me what you see as the difference between a dialect and an accent. Yes. Yes, that's right. That's right. So someone can speak standard American English with a Southern drawl, but may use all of the words what we know as accurately or correctly, whereas someone with a dialect is similar to a language in that it has rules that govern it in terms of grammar and syntax and structure of the sentences. So when a child speaks Southern dialect, Southern Appalachian dialect, or when a child speaks African American English, they're not just speaking standard American English wrong. They're following the patterns associated with that particular dialect. So I think Dr. Hancock mentioned some of those, and I could go on and on and on about this. I could do a whole talk just on this idea of dialect when you look at the connections between dialects and their original origin. So if we look at some, we're going to look just now actually, we're going to look at some of the connections or some of the rules governing both of these dialects that you took your pretest on. And so the rules governing Southern Appalachian dialect can be traced back to early English settlers, and the way some of those words were pronounced have ties to how we see Southern Appalachian dialect and the pronunciation there. And of course, African American English has ties to West African languages. And so not just the actual words, but the speech patterns. And Dr. Hancock gave you a great example with that TH sound not being present in some of the West African languages. And so African American English, sometimes you see that the D sound. So what you're looking at now are just a few. I just pulled some of the. Can I get one of the copies? I didn't bring myself one. As you're looking at it, these are, thank you, just some of the rules associated with the two dialects that I chose. So if we look at the table number 1. Regularization of irregular simple past tense verbs. That's a mouthful, huh? But what happens in Southern Appalachian dialect is we see that there's this overgeneralization. Those irregular past tense verbs, whereas grow versus grew in standard American English, and of course it doesn't make sense in standard American English. Those irregular verbs, we see kids overgeneralize that as well. I rided my bike down the street. The way that would be pronounced or said in Southern Appalachian dialect, the corn growed real good last year. And so it's not that this person says it just, they're in conversation and they happen to say it that way that one time. Every time they say that, that's the way they're going to say it. That's what you do when you speak a dialect. So it's not about saying standard American English wrong. It's about following the patterns. So that person does have that intelligence, that skill, that fluency within their particular dialect because they're consistently using the rules as they know them. So when, an African American child uses that copula, that be copula, which says I be riding my bike down the street, I be doing this, they don't say it that way and then all of a sudden say, I rode my bike down the street. They're using it consistently because that's what makes sense. It's the absence of, when you use that copula, that be, I be doing this, I be doing that. What that, in African American English, it's the communication of an ongoing practice. So I be doing this means that's something that I do on a regular basis. So it makes sense within the context of how they're using it. It's not just wrong standard American English. So let's look at a couple more rules, and then I'll have you, based on the things that we're discussing, maybe go back and try some of your sentences again and see how well you do. So number 2, question? Yes.